Hello and welcome back to English Sound Building. This is the fourth and last short podcast revisiting one of the tongue twisters which I introduced after one of the episodes of season 1 of English Sound Building. If you haven't listened to season 1 yet, I do recommend that you start there before listening to this episode because we look at each of the sounds in much more detail in those longer episodes. As usual, you'll find a video bonus as well as the very short script for today's podcast over on my Patreon page. Do remember that everything is free there. Just keep scrolling down on the main page. But if you want to support me, please do. Thanks so much to those of you who already are. Head to www.patreon.com/EnglishBrickByBrick. The link is in the episode notes if you need it. So our last tongue twister revisit is one which I introduced in the video bonus after the ED endings episode, and it is the trapper, trapped and tripped and tricked, the tricky trickster. And in my opinion, this is one of the trickiest ones we've looked at. It obviously practices those ED endings just in the t pronunciation pattern here in trapped, tripped, tricked. Has a lot of t sounds overall, and also s, a, and schwa from the sounds we've looked at. So a great variety of sounds to practice there, and I think you'll feel a lot of different parts of your mouth working for this one. So we're just going to practice 2 techniques today, and the first one is we're going to start by chaining it. So we'll start with the first word, and then we're just going to add one more word each time until we're reading the full tongue twister. I'll read the words as they appear in the final tongue twister, so I'll read the weak forms and so on as we go. But you will notice some slight changes in some of the sounds when they're the last word that we've got to at that point in time. So I might read it slightly differently when it's followed by a silence compared to the next time when I read it when it's followed by the next word. Listen and see if you notice those places. So listen and repeat. Try to repeat as we go through, but if you prefer, you can wait until I've got to the end, pause the podcast, and do it all again for yourself. The trapper. The trapper trapped. The trapper trapped and. The trapper trapped and tripped. The trapper trapped and tripped and. The trapper trapped and tripped and tricked. The trapper trapped and tripped and tricked the trapper trapped and tripped and tricked the tricky. The trapper trapped and tripped and tricked the tricky trickster. Well done. I think I got a little bit messed up in the middle there with the trapped, tripped, tricked. Hopefully you did a slightly better job than I did. And then our second technique today is going to be reading it silently. And this time I'd like you to try to close your eyes if you think you can manage, if you think you can remember the words. Now, obviously, this isn't one which I can demonstrate for you over the podcast. I can read it silently and you won't hear anything. So pause the podcast here, read it silently to yourself. Try not even to whisper, but just really, really focus on the shape your mouth is making to move between those different sounds. Fantastic. So hopefully we're now ready to read that tongue twister 3 times as quickly as you can. And it is really, really tricky not to get caught up in the trapped and tripped and tricked in the middle. So don't worry if you do, just try to keep going. Let's see how we do. The trapper trapped and tricked the tricky trickster. The trapper trapped and tripped and tricked the tricky trickster. The trapper trapped and tripped and tricked the tricky trickster. Fantastic. So that is all the techniques we're looking at today, but please do remember all of the other techniques we've spoken about in previous episodes. And of course, if you find any of those particularly useful, apply them to any of the tongue twisters we've looked at. The more times you repeat these, the more strength you'll build in your mouth, the better you'll get at moving between the different sounds. And it will be interesting to see if you notice any difference to your pronunciation, if that's something that you're working on. That is the last of these season 1 revisits. I'm taking a few weeks off now before we come to season 2. Do make sure you keep an eye out for that. It should be with you sometime in early May. So until then, enjoy sound building. More importantly, stay safe, and I'll see you again soon.